Hello and welcome to Dormroom Diplomacy. My name's Jack. I'm joined, as usual, by Mr. Matthew Nelson, although
Howdy.
he is without hat. And for
I
those
am
of you
without hat.
wondering, he does have hair.
I
This
do
is-
have hair.
He's
This
not
is a
balding. It's okay, everyone. I know there was concern.
thing, obviously.
But how you doing, man? How you doing?
I've been doing pretty well. It's been a good week for the most part. Busy, but
Wonderful.
good week. How about
Wonderful,
yourself?
Wonderful. Yeah, no, solid. Just chugging along.
Just
Trying to-
chugging along.
Trying to get to Thanksgiving break.
I know.
We actually have next Thursday, all classes are canceled because of
Why?
the inauguration of our new president. So,
Of the
of the
your
university.
University,
yes.
yeah.
Big
yours is the
celebrations
president?
to be had. Yeah.
Huh.
So, yeah.
Oh, it's a once in a time at college experience, I suppose.
Oh, no,
What-
yeah, certainly.
Gotta celebrate it for what it is. We Iowa Stadians don't get that, I suppose.
Tragic.
I know, tragic. How long do you get out for Thanksgiving?
I don't know. Actually.
Because I get like a full 10 days.
Oh,
So,
10 days. Okay. I don't
10
think
full
it's that
days.
much. I think I have to look, but it's that whole week. So,
Right. Gotcha.
it'll be
That's
good.
that's solid.
Looking-
Solid.
Looking
for sure.
forward to that, indeed.
Mhm.
But I think kind of crack right into things.
For sure.
Today's topic is something that I really enjoy looking at, researching, studying, whatever you may.
Uh-huh.
And I have a tendency to kind of, try to share this interest with those around me, sometimes to their frustration. But essentially, what we're talking about today, similar to our episode on kind of fitness, is yet another pillar of health, that being sleep. Its effects on the body, effects on the mind, its effects on productivity, overall lifestyle, kind of the whole shebang, right?
Right.
And just kind of going into our own anecdotal experiences, how we believe that sleep influences or impacts our daily lives, and hopefully trying to share some helpful knowledge
Yeah.
when it comes to either optimizing sleep, or is it even important, or
Yeah.
how to define good sleep, just kind of what all of these things mean.
Right.
And I know we both have differing ideas to a degree on this topic, and so I'm sure we'll get into that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I mean, I think what a lot of people forget about when talking about this topic is how important sleep really is. And obviously there's a lot of different ideas surrounding, obviously, its importance to begin with, but more importantly, like I was saying previously, how you define good sleep, or
Right. What makes sleep good? Like, how can
right,
you
yeah.
quantitatively define it? Because not only is it like a quantitative definition, it's also like, how do you feel afterward? Like,
Right.
it's totally up to the individual as well. We
Mhm.
can just give certain metrics that may help an individual better understand it for themselves.
Yeah, and I mean, it's regardless of how you want to define it, and go and measure it and compare it with other things and kind of place a value on it, it's undeniable that it is very important, and a valuable part to, just your overall health, your well-being. And it's kind of just a part of that, triangle of health, if you will.
Right.
That
Right.
being, sleep, your diet, your nutrition, and exercise.
Exercise.
And so I would, argue that all three are really of equal importance. You can't really have like two without one. You can't have one without the other two.
Right.
And it seems like a lot of people feel that maybe you can, and sure, like, I'm not saying you need all three to be alive. Like, you don't need,
Right.
to have excellent, proficiency in all three of these areas to survive.
Right.
No, it's more of a matter of like prospering and having a you know,
This is basically min-maxing your life. You're gonna try and
yeah,
optimize
exactly.
it to the best ability you can.
Right.
And oftentimes, most people struggle with that,
Mm-hmm.
myself included. But again, it's a goal. It's a goal,
Right. Yeah.
as most things are.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, we're all working on all of these things. It's kind of a lifelong journey. None of us are perfect at it already. But I think it's just kind of important to look at all three of them. And, since we're kind of going into it like this, I'll just say that we'll do an episode in the future just on diet and nutrition to kind of round this out.
Round out the trifecta.
Right, yeah. But I think, like I was saying previously, it's just important to know, like, yes, these aren't necessary to survive per se, but it's more so if you are trying to have an optimal level of health, if you're trying to lead a healthy lifestyle or something, you do need to look into all three of these things. And as with anything, it's a matter of moderation. You don't need to go become a dietitian and, go to school for, nutrition science or anything. You don't need to become a bodybuilder, and you don't need to become some sleep guru.
Right.
Like whatever, it's all things in moderation, as I often try to say. But at the end of the day, you can't really ignore any of these if you're going to attempt to say that you're, pursuing a
healthy,
a healthy lifestyle in an all-encompassing way,
Yeah. So now that we got a little bit of that, preface out of the way, what to you, Mr. Jack Arnold, what is sleep to you?
So the way that I look at sleep is in two dimensions, really. Primarily as a way to kind of, rest and rejuvenate, right? I mean, that's kind of the first thing that comes to people's mind. Is, sleep is, you go to bed at the end of the day because you're tired, and then you wake up refreshed the next morning, and you repeat the process because without that, you would be extraordinarily fatigued, right? I mean, that's kind of obvious.
Makes sense.
The other thing being the fact that sleep is a great means of recovery. It is where your muscles repair most optimally. It's also where muscle tissue is created. And so through the process of working out, kind of the hypertrophic strain that's placed on muscles, whether it be through cardiovascular exercise, through resistance training, essentially what that is it's a micro tearing of your muscle fiber. And in order for muscle to be grown, that muscle fiber is inflamed, it's torn, inflamed, repaired, and, it grows back essentially bigger because of this inflammation. And that's the process. That's how muscle is built. And obviously, you need kind of the amino acid process of muscle protein synthesis, utilizing, protein chains, amino acids, that is gained from diet, nutrition. Like I said, we'll talk about that another time. But sleep is where this whole process occurs most optimally, and really at all. You don't do a whole lot of this muscle protein synthesis, this creation of muscle fiber while awake, simply because the resources within your body are kind of being allocated to more important
preoccupied,
things, like
keeping your body functioning,
moving, and general cognition. And so sleep, while obviously yes, it's to rest, recuperate, and be rejuvenated for the next day, it's also where you recover. And even if you don't have an extensive exercise routine, you're still to a much lesser degree, your movements throughout the day are creating, this inflammation in your muscles that is then repaired while you sleep. Kind of, and I know I said two dimensions. I'd like to kind of go back and add a third, that being kind of the cognitive side of things. sleep is where a lot of kind of neural pathways are created.
Right.
And so, when you learn stuff throughout the day, and even if it's not like on a day-to-day basis, if you're not learning things every day, kind of just the associations that you are creating, the experiences you're having, the information you are consuming on a day-to-day basis, that is absorbed during the day, but it's kind of processed and pathed neurologically while you sleep. And kind of your like memories are kind of, created, if you will. And essentially what that means is you just have kind of the synapses, the synapse pathing kind of being formed where there's a familiarity created in your brain.
Right.
To therefore kind of recall later on then.
And of course, there's plenty of studies to kind of support the idea that, continuously refreshing your brain of these different, whatever you're trying to remember, whatever you're trying to understand, refreshing it, often and frequently over, set intervals is good. But oftentimes there's studies that also say that, like you were saying, refreshing yourself before you go to sleep oftentimes can help you, remember to a higher capacity than it would be otherwise available.
I mean, there's lots of ways to kind of optimize your memory and your retainment of information with utilizing proper sleep. And so, kind of all of those different dimensions play into the importance of sleep, and why it's such an integral role, or why it plays such an integral role in your overall health and well-being. And so it's kind of just, comes down to the fact that, like, yes, again, it's not necessary to survive, but for anyone who is seeking to optimize, any of those aspects I kind of talked about, sleep certainly is important for that.
It's sort of like, and this might seem like, it's obviously an obvious analogy, but like, if you're not sleeping enough, you're not productive. Like, it's not a very, it's a very, very evident correlation of things. Like, if you're sleeping the hours that you're used to, you find yourself to be more productive. I mean, everyone's had those nights where you just wake up in the morning and it's just not going to be a good day, and you know it. And I would be willing to bet more times than not it's due to a lack of regularity in your sleep. The amount of hours, the time that you went to sleep, the time that you woke up, whatever it may be, it's probably and most obviously due to that. Now, there's other factors, of course. I'm not going to tell you that sleep's going to fix your entire life. Could clearly be other medical issues, that cause these things. However, it's a very good starting point for, things like if you feel unproductive due to, fatigue or whatever it may be, it's definitely a good starting point.
I think that's a really good point to make, that, yes, this will, getting good sleep, sure, it may not cure all of your, medical ailments, but, it certainly can completely change your life, especially if you are experiencing very poor sleep. And I acknowledge that some people have medical conditions that prevent them from getting good sleep. Obviously,
and we sympathize.
That in itself. And then, like, if that is the case, receiving, and looking into how you can, and I obviously, acknowledge that these are very difficult to deal with. I'm not saying, oh, go fix your problems. Like, no shit, okay. But all the more importance to kind of look in, do the research, and see how these, problems could be fixed.
Do your own research. Definitely go consult with, like, medical professionals, because oftentimes, a lot of things have some way to improve. I'm not saying it's going to cure your issues, but oftentimes there are ways to improve it. And the first step is obviously, doing your own research and consulting with professionals.
Yeah. I mean, I always like to kind of look back previously to that triangle of health I was kind of talking about. If you're trying to address any, ailment you may have, an illness or some kind of, predisposed condition, whatever it may be, or just a problem in life,
Right.
and you're looking for some kind of solution, just look back onto the kind of triangle of health, that being sleep, nutrition, exercise. If you're nailing all of those really well, then, sure, there's probably a, problem more serious than that needs to be looked into, and you can, look into the right places to deal with that. But if you're not, kind of nailing each of those down to a sufficient degree,
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, you don't have to go crazy with any one of these things. It's all in moderation. But if you are not giving it the proper diligence of at least giving each of, the segments of that triangle value in your day-to-day routine, then I think you're just doing yourself a disservice.
Absolutely.
Because that's, like you said, it's for sleep, but for all of them is both a great starting point, but also a great foundation upon which to build kind of a healthy lifestyle and kind of a holistic way of living.
It's like, I mean, you could make plenty analogies about this. It's like, you've got whatever, I don't know, say you've got some sort of a power plant and you're feeding it coal and water for steam and so on and so forth. It's the same analogy we could use anywhere. You take one of the elements away, the whole structure of itself just crumbles and doesn't work. And while it's not to that degree, it's not like, oh, you take away the dieting, you're not going to produce anything whatsoever. Like, no, but
Right, yeah.
it's still very, very very, very similar in context to pretty much any analogy you can make on this.
Yeah, I mean,
Take one away, you have issues.
Or put water in a car and expect it to run,
Right.
that wouldn't make sense. But,
No.
You put Diet Coke and cheeseburgers into a human and you expect it to function, come on, how's that supposed to work?
Are you shitting on cheeseburgers? Hold up here.
No. Here, sugar. That's what I'll shit on. There.
Okay.
Because that way I won't be a hypocrite.
You're the only person that is acceptable to.
I know, exactly.
Yell at sugar.
That way I won't be a hypocrite. So yeah, Diet Coke and an Oreo McFlurry. How about that?
Hey, at least, I mean, we could do this whole, because that's a whole debate, the Diet Coke versus the regular Coke, which is worse for you.
Exactly. I mean, it's funny because, I always say, like, I mean, sure, like, I don't eat sugar. I'll drink diet soda every now and then. And, a lot of people have just the idea that because it's 0 calories, 0 sugar, it's that much better for you. It's really not. And I know a lot of them no longer use aspartame as a sweetener. They don't have to. The sucralose and the artificial sweeteners within them, regardless of long-term benefits, because frankly, there's not enough, evidence-based research to support any real claims when it comes to that. But there are, there's serious evidence to support its effect on digestion, and it ain't pretty, people, is all I'll say. But we'll leave that to the diet episode. I would like to talk a lot about it.
Still surprises me that aspartame is like actually okay in countries around the world.
Right, I know.
Doesn't make sense, but that's a topic for a different time.
I mean, like, there was a time where like all chewing gum was flavored with aspartame, and some still is. So
there's some very negative effects with aspartame.
Oh
and,
yes. Oh yes.
Yeah.
We'll get into that on the diet one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like we were saying, kind of before our little tangent, it's just important to look at all, sides of this triangle. We'll just keep going back to this analogy because I think it's a good one.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, yes, you take one side off, like sure, I mean, with the analogy of a triangle, yes, it would collapse. Supposing geometry and physics are real constructs within this world.
As an engineer, I can confirm.
But I'm sure you can imagine what we're getting at.
Right.
It's more of an ideal and optimal way of achieving wellness that we're, wanting to make the goal here, I suppose.
So, Mr. Arnold, then, how should one achieve, this fabled, idea of good sleep? How should one go about achieving that?
Well, allow me to give some advice as a non-medical professional.
With a disclaimer.
I'll give the disclaimer and also the fact that, I can only provide my own anecdotal experience.
Right.
Now, I like to, do a lot of research.
Right.
A lot of the claims I make are evidence-based. Now, they are also influenced by my own opinions that I concede. And also, what works for me does not work for everyone. That being said,
as per everything we say on this podcast, go do your own research as well.
Right, yeah, and I think that's an important way to look at anything. And also, use a variety of sources. Don't take one, source of information verbatim and, begin to preach it to the world. It's important to come to your own conclusions, people.
Thank you, 9th grade English teacher. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
And so, just do your own due diligence, essentially. But anyways, allow me
how
to
does
give
one achieve good sleep, Mr.
some
Arnold?
wildly unprofessional advice here. The way that I greatly value sleep. I greatly value all sides of that triangle of health that I talk about. Because if I didn't, I would be a hypocrite and be talking out my ass. So I have to hold myself accountable. That being said, when it comes to sleep, for me personally, I think what has helped me so much, and this is kind of a luxury that not many people have, but I'll get into why it may not be. And at this point in my life, and this goes for all three of these, aspects, but if I do not get good sleep, and for someone not getting good sleep might be like, oh man, I slept like 2 hours last night. I'm just exhausted. Like, I'm too tired. I'm not productive. Can't do anything. No, for me, if I get anything less than 5-6 hours, I want to say, I'm destroyed. I aim, let me, if I do some quick mental math, I aim to get at least 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep per night.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all deep sleep. It's not all REM sleep.
No,
that's not ideal.
Not.
It should be. You can't get 8 hours of REM sleep a night. That's not how it works.
Well, we're not going to go into physiology, but yeah.
But good deep sleep. Obviously, not all of that is good deep sleep. That being said, I'm going to keep saying that being said, I guess. For me, because I have, kind of created such a intensive sleep routine, if you will, for a while now, let's say past couple years, has been the period of my life where I have started to take all of these things pretty seriously.
Right.
All throughout that time, sleep for me has been just integral to both of the other kind of aspects of that triangle of health. Without good sleep, I cannot exercise well. Without good sleep, I don't feel the urge or the want to, carry out good nutritional choices, I guess. In addition to that, as I've kind of pivoted more and more into academic and professional goals, it's become very important to me to get good sleep as a means of boosting my productivity, allowing me to get more work done. And I think when it comes to that, there's a common misconception that, sleeping's a waste of time. Like, you could be getting more work done. You could be getting more studying done if you don't sleep as much.
Absolutely not. There are plenty of good ways to organize your life that does not require, giving up sleep.
This is so far from the truth, even if it's not a time thing, right? Let's say, and this is funny because I have a friend and she just gets terrible sleep. And, there's been many conversations, but essentially the example I gave was, having two extra, because there was, one night where I was going to bed because I had a test in the morning, and she was saying that she was going to stay up later and study because she had a test in the morning, right? Obviously, a little bit of a difference here. And what I told her was the 2 extra hours of unfocused, unengaged studying that she would have done from the hours of like 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., right? Those 2 hours would benefit her much, much more if they were done sleeping, where, like I said, with the cognitive benefits of getting good sleep, you're forming those neural pathways, increasing cognition, increased memory, all of these things. The 2 hours would have benefited her much, much more had they been devoted to sleeping rather than studying. And, there's the whole thing of, if you're studying and you're already tired, like, are you really getting anything done?
Right. No, absolutely. I agree with you entirely. Now, the question is here, and the question that's very important in this, is this, story based on the critical fact that there was missed sleep, or is it based on the fact that there was just more of a longer period of time to study based on, general sleep patterns?
Are you saying, like, depending on when they would have to wake up, like
right,
the amount
like,
of sleep?
No. Is this person waking up at 10 a.m. every day, going to the same class in a rhythm, or is this a test that happened in the morning just because of a weird registrar type, deal?
Yeah, no. Obviously, it's an example, and it's
clearly.
One case scenario. For this example, yes, they had it was an 8 a.m. Class, and they were taking the test in class, and so it was not an interruption of kind of a regular circadian rhythm. Now, not getting enough sleep was,
right,
but
obviously.
they have, they had to wake up for this 8 a.m. Every however many days.
Right. So it was a loss of sleep then. It was a
yes.
loss of net sleep.
Right. Yeah. But it was done with the the perception that the extra couple hours of studying would be a net benefit when it comes to the test.
See, I agree entirely with you here on this one.
And we'll get into what the exceptions that you're digging for there, because I think there's validity in some of that. And so we'll get into that. But I just before want to kind of address, obviously, that's kind of a one case scenario,
right?
An example. It's a good example. Like, it kind of shows what I'm trying to get at here, but it's kind of that common misconception, and I think it happens certainly a lot in the academic setting,
right.
Certainly in the college setting, and a lot as well in the professional world. A lot of people who become workaholics and believe that sleeping is essentially a waste of their time, and if they were awake, they could be making more money, making more connections, boosting their throughput, whatever it may be,
right,
to just net a higher productivity. And research shows, anecdotal experience shows, this is not the case.
Right. And I'm not going to be, if that's the lifestyle that someone wants to live, I'm not going to be the one to tell you to not do that. Like, whatever, that's your decision. However, obviously, like you've been saying, research predicts otherwise. And different lives for different people. Like, it's.
No, I mean, that's absolutely true. I think the important distinction to make is this. Like, you're correct. People can live their lives however they want. I'm not one to tell you how you should or should not conduct yourself. That being said, man, I keep saying that. That's going to piss me off. Anyways.
Shortly after.
Yeah, right. It's better than but.
It's true. And
Exactly. No more filler words, right?
Uh-huh.
I will continue to use filler words, I guess. Anyways, carrying on. What a lot of people tend to do, like you were saying, is, have these workaholic lifestyles and just devote themselves to their work completely. They say that sleep is a waste of time, all this, all that, right? Sure, live your life however you want, like you were saying. But if you are looking for a solution, if you think that you have some sort of problem, you need to address that And man, I kind of lost my train of thought. But essentially what I'm getting at is you can live your life however you want. But if you're going to ignore these 3 pillars, kind of
Right.
the segments of this triangle, if you're going to ignore those in pursuit of this lifestyle, then you
Right.
cannot, complain or feel that you have a problem with one of these. You can't say, oh, I just can't get any work done because I'm not sleeping enough, but I just have so much work to do because,
It's
you
entirely
need,
up to you to tell your future. It's entirely
yeah.
up to you.
If you want to ignore these and lead your own life and, while I may have my own view on that and see that it is not optimal and, whatever, it's just my opinion, right? That has no
Right.
influence on you necessarily. If you are looking for a solution to a problem in your life within the sphere of, holistic well-being, let's say, you need to look at these 3 segments, kind of this foundation as your starting point for diagnosing these problems.
For sure. And I think going back a little bit to, missing sleep, is it a bad thing? Yes. However, I feel that on isolated occasions, when it's not in excess of a certain amount, it's not necessarily a negative thing. Clearly, when it becomes negative is when it becomes repetitive. And like missing an hour of sleep once every 2 weeks is not going to screw you up.
That has virtually no effect.
Right. And it's it's adding up a net total of missed hours over a, short interval of time that starts to screw with your bodily functions. Missing an hour of sleep because you're, studying for an exam in a very, isolated occasion might not necessarily hurt your overall sleep.
Right. Yeah.
However, it might hurt your psyche. But we'll talk about that in another episode about the anxiety and, so on and so forth. But I feel that I want to make it clear that, you don't need to live this, idealistic lifestyle to have productive days.
Yeah, no,
but
I mean, that's absolutely right.
It's important. It is important to be, again, I'll keep professing the same thing, is being aware of your life, being in control of your own life, and making those decisions. Again, it's up to you to make those decisions ultimately.
Absolutely.
But you can have cheat days. It's like the gym.
Yeah,
you can have
no,
cheat days.
for sure. Because I think a lot of the times these discussions we have may come across as super idealistic, that we're kind of trying to purport some idea of this ideal way of living. You have these perfect schedules, these amazing habits. You follow this rigorous routine, and it's just this most optimal way to live. That's not ideal for anyone. That doesn't really happen. And just such as life, like problems arise.
We don't live in a utopia.
Exactly. And so I'm not ever going to claim to be perfect at any of these. And like you were saying, it's important to be conscious of your actions and to look at these kind of foundational pillars, if you will, and use them as a means of kind of just prioritizing your values when it comes to your well-being. Obviously, there's other things in life that are important. I'm not just, like relationships and career and whatnot. Like, yes, I acknowledge that. I'm just saying when it comes to your own personal well-being, looking at all these things and kind of just using them to gauge where you're at, as well as how you should prioritize your time. I mean, it also just comes down to time management. All of these things, exercising takes time, sleep takes time, nutrition takes time, like eating well takes time.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Regardless of, the exertion needed to perform exercise or kind of the discipline needed to have a good diet. Same goes with sleep. It's, kind of a matter of discipline, of deciding, okay, I'm going to not do this so I can sleep because I recognize the long-term benefits of getting this sleep are greater than the instant gratification I could get from scrolling on TikTok for, 15 more minutes.
For sure.
And so
for sure,
it's just
a constant battle.
No, I mean, certainly. And so it's important to just look at all of these like I was saying, as kind of a way of valuing your time and then therefore managing that time.
Right.
And creating some form of routine. Like I said, it doesn't need to be this drilled in routine. It's more of a general schema.
We all now kind of, our audience, or most of our audiences, and us included, we kind of live on our own now. So we make our own decisions. And again, no one's going to tell you to put the TikTok down. That's your own decision. No one's going to tell you to stop playing the video game. Hell, no one's going to tell you to, stop doing whatever other hobby, you're doing to sleep. That's your own decision. Or work. Obviously, like you're saying, lots of people are workaholics, and that brings us into our a little bit of a next section. Shout out to you, you STEM majors out there, and shout out to all the people who, work the midnight oil. Those people that perhaps do night shifts. There's plenty of great examples of individuals who have perhaps shifted their sleep cycles, and we want to kind of get a little bit into, does this affect you? Are you ineffectively using your time? Is this going to change the way that your body functions in any meaningful, insignificant way?
Yeah. I think the important acknowledgement that I want to make before getting into this is, like you were saying, that some life circumstances prevent people from having a good sleep routine or from maintaining a optimal circadian rhythm. And so, we'll kind of get into this discussion and bring up why, this is beneficial or not beneficial. But that being said, that's all within the lens of, kind of the ideal lifestyle. And, I recognize that that's not everyone has even the option for that to be the case, especially in the case of if you work night shifts, and you don't have a choice to do that. Like, that's not people don't have the liberty of making that choice. Then there's no way to attain this ideal way of living. And so if that's the case, obviously we understand that, and that's not really any kind of attack on there's no attempt to kind of condemn you're not getting this enough sleep, or you're not having this optimal circadian rhythm, or even when it comes to exercise, diet, like all these things. Like, yes, certain life circumstances prevent one from living kind of this ideal way of living, and so I just want to make sure that that's clear.
And when we get into this, because me and Jack both have different, sleeping schedules. The moment I got into college, getting, a STEM majors, and I'm going to say this like, it's every STEM major. It's not. It's a lot of them. I'll be real with you. It is a lot of them. It's a lot of the engineers out there. But getting into college, it's like, the average, you go to sleep at like 2, you wake up at like 10. That's your day. That's 8 hours. That's the recommended amount of sleep for an individual of my age, and my size. That's what it is. And does that altering of it change? I don't know. There's studies that say it does. There's studies that say it doesn't. It's kind of a mixed bag a lot of the time. What is the most important part, and you mentioned it briefly, was the impact of your circadian rhythms. And your circadian rhythms are going to naturally want to wake you up when it's bright and go to sleep when it's dark. Like, that is the natural way that this works. And I've noticed that this is just a personal, anecdotal thing that I've seen, is that when we started doing this podcast, there was an episode that I was really pissed off that my lighting was all weird because I had a big old stripe across my face. And it was due to some, the sun coming in from my window off to my left, and it basically would, cast a shadow. And since then, I've implemented blackout curtains, and I have blackout curtains on my window. Now, no, I'm not a shut-in. I do open them during the day, and when I'm not recording, they're not closed at all. However, when I do go to sleep, I put the blackout curtains up, and I've noticed that I sleep a lot better, and I sleep a lot deeper all the way till 10 o'clock when the blackout curtains were there. Like, beforehand, I could physically feel myself, not fully asleep for the last 3 hours, the last 2 hours. And it did make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Putting those curtains there, I swear, it has made a world of difference, which makes me more believe the studies that kind of say that, good sleep is based on the rhythms that have to do with light and dark. And obviously,
Mm-hmm.
there's a shit ton of biochemistry that goes into this that I don't even want to get into or don't have the qualifications to talk about. But on a very, very surface level,
Mm-hmm.
this is how I've seen it to function and how I've seen, ways to implement different things to perhaps help you achieve good sleep if you don't use the regular cycle. And
Yeah.
like Jack was saying, what, Mr. Arnold, are your most effective study hours during the day?
I mean, I do most of my studying on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays between the times of like 2 and 5
Right.
p.m. And so
Straight
I mean,
during the day.
I'll get it is, yeah, and I'll get into my whole kind of routine. I mean, I'm not going to break down my whole routine. We don't need to do that. But I'll get through the general idea, the points I want to make with that. But very quick, I just kind of want to respond to what it was you're saying. And I mean, I certainly agree. A lot of the circadian rhythm has to do with light and dark. And so, like, yes, blackout curtains help it to stay dark, even when it is light out, if you have kind of an altered circadian rhythm. And I also understand that if, you have, you just use the academic setting as the example. If you have classes at noon, or if you have classes at, 10 a.m. or whatever, like late morning,
Right.
early afternoon time, it makes sense to, stay up later and get up for those classes. Kind of a philosophy of mine when designing my schedule, and again, this is, I tried to make my schedule as ideal and as optimal as possible, because that's how I kind of enjoy living life at this point, honestly.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of just become an obsession of mine, a lot of people would say it's, kind of a toxic thing that can be a hindrance, and sure, maybe it is. But it's certainly helped me a lot. So for now, I'll just gaslight myself and continue to do so. But I attempted kind of when scheduling out my classes to make it so that I was almost forced to have a regular circadian rhythm, one that is connected to the sun. And so what you're saying is correct. Your circadian rhythm can be altered. Just because it can, however, does not mean it's necessarily optimal. And we'll get into that in a sec.
Right.
But it can certainly be altered to a degree. And typically anything more than, I think the literature supports anything more than like a 3 to 5 hour shift.
Right.
In your circadian rhythm is when it does start to harm you.
And I wasn't what I'm trying to say is what I wasn't arguing is like it's been very clearly, researched and studied that being entirely by like 12 hours shifting your rhythms is not optimal at all. Like that's been proven. Can
And
you
a
live
lot-
with it? Yes.
Right.
But is it optimal? No.
A lot of that comes in with, like we were saying, people who work night shifts.
Right.
There is, I believe, like a 30% decrease in quality of living of people who work night shifts. It's self-reported. The data can be skewed plenty of ways.
And obviously, yeah, like that's not entirely based just on sleep, in its primal form.
Right.
Like
yeah.
you're saying, hell,
But-
there's hundreds of millions of different factors.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of variables that go into equating, quality of a life. But there was a study done, and it basically showed that, people who work night shifts have a decrease in 30% of their quality in living. And the main distinguishing factor between them and the, control group for the study was their circadian rhythm. So, do with that what you will. There's certainly plenty of evidence to support the fact that shifting your circadian rhythm by more than that 5 hours does have detrimental effects on your health, your well-being. But like you were saying, shifting it by 2-3 hours doesn't have a whole lot of an effect. The main difference that comes in is essentially the whole light and dark thing. There is a large difference between light from the sun and artificial light from, the source of a light bulb. Is it life-changing differences? No, it is not. And like I said, this discussion is, being looked at from the lens of optimizing sleep and productivity and creating kind of an ideal way of living. So obviously, this isn't, always going to be ideal or even possible at times. But the link between, the human body, the circadian rhythm, and the sun and the light produced from the sun, kind of the relationship between the body and that light is very different than the relationship between the body and artificially produced light. And what it really comes down to is both the secretion of melatonin as well as the secretion of serotonin, which basically is, sleepy time and happy time, awakey time,
Exactly, yeah.
in simple terms. And so basically when, the sun goes down, the body starts naturally secreting melatonin, and it's, very small amounts. It's often not noticeable. For some people, more for others. Obviously, it's a biological process that varies greatly. And then in the mornings, obviously, you are being kind of rising with the sun. There's plenty of literature to support, and this also goes into the whole culture of setting alarms or having those alarms that light up when they are going off, and all these things. And these are all obviously different ways to
strategies
to optimize and try and get the most out of your sleep. But in ideal circumstances, one would fall asleep when the sun sets and rise when the sun rises.
Now, modern society doesn't like that.
Right. No, they don't. However, trying to frame one's schedule to mirror that, and like I said, then that's why this argument's so hard to make, because it's just so idealistic and hard to achieve. But it is certainly the most optimal way to sleep is to do that and align your circadian rhythm with the rhythm of the sun, just because of the the chemicals that are released within your body in relation to that light that is released from the sun.
Right. And again, we talk about circadian rhythms that, obviously it's chemicals that are, like you said, it's a neurological and, biochemical process. But once you've done it enough times, your circadian rhythms are attributed or, likened to a clock, right? That's what they are. They're just a clock.
Right. Yeah.
And it's, why do you think jet lag exists? It's the same reason.
Yeah.
Not everything is attributed to this, sun concept, but it has a big impact in making it work to begin with.
And I think a big thing is, even if you're not trying to create this most optimal sleep schedule and, sleep with the sun and rise with the sun, like all that, like I certainly can see that that's unattainable. And so what I think is important to look at is maintaining a consistent circadian rhythm,
right?
And having a consistent time that you are going to sleep and waking up, establishing this, even if it's not a hyper optimized circadian rhythm, the existence of a rhythm at all is certainly better than none.
Lots of evidence goes to prove that some of the actually probably more important is the factor of just keeping it consistent.
Right. Yeah. And so without, you don't need to get into the nuance of necessarily creating the most optimal times and whatnot. As long as you're, creating a schedule where you are going to sleep at the same times, waking up at the same times, and getting a proper amount of sleep, anywhere from, let's say, 7 to 9 hours, depending on, all sorts of, height, weight,
whatever,
male, female, all of the above. Age is a big one. It's probably the biggest one. all these things. But as long as you're getting kind of the recommended range for who you are, just creating a consistent sleep schedule will be the most beneficial thing for you.
And this is your weekly reminder that biochemical processes are different in every human, and you need to do what your body tells you to do.
Yeah.
You know, you don't bullshit me. You know when you're tired. Like, come on, it's not difficult. Like we talk all this, high end, science and stuff, but your body,
listen to your body, like seriously.
For the most part, has a good idea of what it needs, and it will tell you, and you just choose to ignore it.
No caffeine 5 hours before bed.
We'll talk about that discussion another time. That will set me off, so we'll discuss that a little bit later.
we should.
I have an interesting perspective on this one where it makes a difference. But yeah.
What do you mean? Oh, we'll get into it later.
We'll get into
That's
it.
Fine.
But
That's fine.
Essentially, I think the greatest thing is it's just like, listen to your body. Obviously, it's going to tell you what you need. Sleep consistency is the most important thing out of all of it. Consistently getting the same amount of sleep within the tolerable levels among the same interval each night. Missing 1 hour to 2 hours of sleep every other couple weeks is not going to kill you. Right. No one's perfect. And just kind of building up this discipline to be try and at least give it your best go to get what you feel you want out of ideal sleep is, the best way to parse out this episode and go about looking at it.
Yeah. Not everyone can. You certainly don't try to attempt to be perfect or ideal, and don't set out to create this grand plan of, productivity where you're going to, have the best sleep and the best, all of these things. Just, look at the fundamentals, like the triangle we were talking about previously. You nail down your fundamentals and you build up slowly from there, and take it as a process rather than, just look at each step along the way rather than some goal that may seem unattainable at first. Because if you of just take it slowly and make your goal progressing in an upward trajectory, every day, every week, every month, whatever it may be, you'll make a lot more progress than you think. And once you get to a point where you've improved so much, you'll never want to go back to where you were before.
Right. I think that's a great place to, give this a good send-off.
Certainly.
For the audience, though, we love these types of episodes. It's a lot of fun to get into the weeds on this type of stuff. If you guys have any ideas on, we're open to ideas on episodes in general, but when it comes to this stuff, if you have any ideas when it comes to like concepts of physiology or, efficiency and function of the body, so on and so forth, we'd love to hear them, and we'd love to try and give our best, take on whatever topic you have. Whether you agree or disagree with us greatly.
Right. Yeah, no, if you disagree with us, please let us know. I'd be curious.
We'll blindly throw our opinions into the abyss for you.
We can't say that you should look at a variety of sources and engage in, meaningful discussions.
Without
us doing it ourselves. So please, whether your thoughts be positive or negative, let us know. As always, you guys know where to find us, really on all the platforms. We have short form content coming out this past week and going forward. Working on getting that out.
Absolutely.
We're having fun with that as well. But yeah, until next time.
Until next time. See ya.
Peace.